What are synergies? In every merger or acquisition, whether it's a joining of equal parties or a larger company acquiring a smaller business, there's always the objective of synergies, the 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. And so in this business and mergers and acquisitions and the M&A world, you'll always hear, oh, that would be a real synergistic transaction. The synergies between those two companies would be excellent. And so we wanted to explore in this video, what are the two primary categories of synergies and what are some general ways to think about this, because it bakes into the process of when you're going to exit a business or when you're selling your business. The more of these synergies that you can highlight or acknowledge on the front end, the more value that you can ask for in a transaction. Knowing how valuable your company can be to prospective acquirers allows you to communicate that more clearly and therefore gives you more leverage ultimately when structuring that transaction. If you say, look, I understand that our company generates X and a multiple of X would provide a yield of Y. However, the addition of our company to your existing business, whether that fills a gap in terms of services, in terms of product, in terms of access to customers, whatever it may be, if there are synergies that can be derived or clearly communicated, it certainly helps in that negotiation process. So the first primary synergy category are revenue synergies or sales. And so you can think of this very broadly as you have a West Coast widget manufacturer and you have an East Coast widget services company. Both of these sell east and west of the Mississippi, let's call it, or Texas to be more geographically linear. But in that merger of those two companies, not only are you getting the revenues of both of these companies in terms of their respective services and geographies, all of the services can be cross-sold. So now all of the services that were primarily just on the eastern part of the United States can be sold to the western part of the United States. Now all of the widgets being manufactured on the West Coast can be sold on the east side of the country. And so that's your typical 1 + 1 revenue synergy. In addition to that, you could then see a widget services manufacturing and distribution software company that has a tremendous product, however does not have access to the customers or distribution channels, and therefore the porting on of that business can then be sold to all of the customers across the country, creating more stickiness as software platforms, dashboards, and integration into businesses can tend to be a component that really ties things together. And so oftentimes that's how you will see the aggregation of businesses evolve, where you are buying products, you're buying services, you're covering geographic territories, and then you're getting kind of these wrapper type products, oftentimes with software technology, some kind of unique service that supplements and complements the totality of it. But that's where you'll see the revenue synergies largely. Looking at the cost side of a business, there are cost synergies or expense synergies that can be attained through intelligent acquisitions and mergers. And so you can think of that again breaking down, as we have in previous videos, between the cost of goods sold as well as the operating expenses. And so from a cost of goods sold or COGS perspective, you can think of purchasing power. The reason why there are hardware cooperatives or supermarket cooperatives, think of the Price Chopper, Price Right, or think of the Ace Hardwares, right, is that even if some of these stores are independently owned, the collection of their purchasing power allows them to have equal standing to, say, a Lowe's or a Home Depot in the home improvement space. But the same logic is applied with acquisitions or mergers. If you're going out there and you're buying 100 pounds of wood to make pencils out of, or you're buying 1,000,000 pounds of wood, you can rest assured that the larger order is going to yield a better price. And so that's it from a COGS perspective, oftentimes where the synergies are extracted. On an operating expense basis, you'll oftentimes see it relative to supporting staff, back office administration. And so bank consolidations and mergers have historically always been heavily predicated on OPEX or operating expense synergies. Oftentimes, if a bank has a very cohesive back office and they just keep adding on new front office or revenue generating people, they really don't need to grow that back office. And therefore, as more revenue grows, it can be at higher and higher margins. Seeing the same things with services companies that consolidate, whether it's engineering, architectural, law, pest control. I mean, it can really run the gamut of industries, but it's that same logic, is that as you have critical mass, the back office doesn't need to grow at the same pace as the front office, and therefore allowing for some operating margins to increase. That's a thought for today. Synergies, it's a word you'll always hear and you'll always want to be part of the M&A or business exit or sale conversation. What does it really mean? 1 + 1 = 3. That being the objective of a transaction, and being able to clearly communicate that is a very valuable component of facilitating a transaction. And therefore, we always try to drill down a little bit further and say, what are the revenue synergies? What are the cost synergies? And how does this yield a very appealing and interesting prospective acquisition opportunity? So that's a thought for today. Keep pushing forward. God bless. We'll see everyone next time.